By now, I'm sure most of you have heard about the story of Enna, the Aeon of Order. Enna was one of the oldest eons and had been around since likely the creation of the universe itself. They represented a rather fundamental aspect of reality and would often clash with eons who brought chaos into the universe. But that's all in the past, and Enna has long since been removed from the current setting. As far as we know, they were absorbed by Xipe, another eon representing a similar concept to order, harmony. But how exactly did Xipe even accomplish this? I mean, they had only just ascended and order had seemingly been around since the very beginning. How was an intern eon able to absorb one of the OGs? Could there be an explanation of how this was possible, or was it all just a fluke? Well, I think I might have an idea, and that's what I want to discuss in this video. Before we dive into that though, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. The first time we hear about eons absorbing other eons was actually from Kafka when she explains how eons can die. She mentions that paths with overlapping concepts will eventually collide and the broader path will engulf the narrower one, using harmony and order as an example. That itself might be a sufficient explanation. Perhaps the path of harmony simply encompassed more concepts compared to order, and this alone is what made it the broader path. However, I think there are several more factors at play here. Firstly, I think that when harmony came into being, humanity, whether consciously or subconsciously, began shifting their belief from order to harmony. Paths are congregations of imaginary energy, but more importantly, they are fueled by the faith, belief, and actions of mortals. If people stop believing or acting in the way that fuels a specific path, then its influence will slowly start to fade. That's not to say that the path ends up disappearing, because we know that that's not possible, but rather it loses its potency. Because the eon's strength are directly tied to their paths, the less potent it is, the weaker the eons technically become. So what I suspect happened, and I kind of thought about this through conversations in the comments with some of you, is that perhaps people not only stopped wanting order, but rather just preferred harmony more. This caused the fuel of imaginary energy to be channeled to harmony instead of order, making it the more broader path. But why did this happen? Why did billions, even trillions of people suddenly stop believing or acting in the way that represented order? Well, simply put, order might not be as great as it sounds, and when an alternative concept rose up, people simply jumped ship. During Sunday's farewell and throughout most of Penacony, we see Sunday's version of order, which looks a lot like control more than anything else. Most of his plans under the banner of order, or at least his understanding of it, required everyone to give up their freedoms for security. Even when he was younger, the rules he instituted in Aideen Park that were inspired by order were pretty strict. It's either you followed the rules, no matter how nonsensical they were, or you would face punishment, and in Sunday's case, the punishments were often far harsher than the rule itself. And that's just a single guy enforcing his ideals. Can you imagine if it were an eon and this was on a cosmic scale? It's very likely that the order Enna was peddling came at a price. You had security, yes, but also had to follow a billion rules, all with their own harsh punishments. But rules alone might not have made everyone switch over to harmony. The state of the universe at the time likely contributed to this migration of belief as well. I mean, think about the events of that era. Tezzerant and the Swarm were very much still active. Nanook was just recently born, and the Stellarons were starting to infect whole galaxies. Even the Aeons were actively warring with one another, with Enna and Qlipoth scheming to take out Tezzerant and Ouroboros. The universe at the time was chaotic to say the least. So if you were a regular mortal, you'd likely favor order over chaos, despite all of order's rules, but when harmony came into the picture, you suddenly had a better offer on the table. Would you rather have a bunch of rules that would punish you if you didn't agree with them, or just plain harmony? Even the tenets of harmony might sound pretty good at that point, given one of their core beliefs is that the strong should always protect the weak. A regular person would likely want that over whatever rules order claimed to introduce, since both paths promise safety and security. Simply put, it was just a better offer. This might be why many started to follow harmony instead of order, and what allowed a newly ascended Xipe and their path to immediately gain sufficient strength to absorb Enna. To add to this, if harmony as a concept also encompassed more on the emotional spectrum compared to order, even if people didn't flock to it, they would still unknowingly contribute to it. Yet another nod at harmony simply being wider, at least conceptually. That said, a decrease in followers might not be the only reason. While a reduction of followers and a constant supply of imaginary energy likely contributed to Anna's weakening, there might also be another thing that exacerbated the situation. As I mentioned earlier, Anna and Klipoth were in the process of eliminating Tezzeranth and Ouroboros from the universe. While we haven't seen any Aeon unleash 100% of their power, they are likely able to easily destroy galaxies if they wished. I mean, a fragment of Anna's power was able to plunge an entire system into a dream, and even Nanook's emanators are planet busters at minimum. So a clash between Aeons must expand a titanic amount of power. Perhaps, during their fight with Tezzeranth, Anna came out of it with more than just bruises. I mean, at the end, Tezzeranth only ended up being sealed, so I imagine Anna and Klipoth perhaps took quite a beating as well, ultimately weakening them further. So both a combination of Aeon level fights, Harmony having more input channels, and the transition of their followers is what I think caused Anna to ultimately end up being absorbed. Anna not only lost influence to the path of Harmony, but was also caught out at their weakest. Of course, most of this is just conjecture on my part, and it's not explicitly mentioned yet the circumstances surrounding their downfall. But given we know some of the inner workings of the path and the Aeons, this seems like a plausible explanation. That said, there could be a number of equally possible alternatives. Maybe Xipe was already stronger than Enna when they ascended, or perhaps the strength of a path is tied completely to their underlying concepts rather than its believers. Plenty of alternatives are possible to explain what really happened here. The idea that the migration of believers can weaken a path and its Aeon just happens to be something I personally find interesting. I mean, despite Kafka knowing of the absorption method to kill an Aeon, she and the Celeron hunters still opted to duke it out with Nanook, meaning it isn't something they can easily achieve. Convincing a whole universe to jump ship to another belief is likely impossible and only happens in the most perfect circumstances like with Anna and Xipe. I just find it overall funny and maybe a bit ironic if this were true. Most mortals in Star Rail place their faith and belief in these space gods and often look to them for salvation and answers, when unbeknownst to them, the gods may likely rely on them just as much. Their existence and even power hinges on whether or not humanity acts and believes in their corresponding paths. So perhaps mortals are super important to these Aeons, we just don't know it. With that, I'll end the video here. Do you think the idea makes sense, or do you think there's another reason Xipe was able to absorb Anna? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found the video entertaining, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.